champion Yoshihiko Ikawa pulled together a Jeskai deck. I think it's fair to say it is more or less just 3 colours, which isn't something we always see in this field. And we're going to see him do battle and try to get off to a good start in defending his title against Kevin Thanakit. I had a quick look over Kevin's list here, and it is my favourite and also the worst colour combination in Modern Horizons 3. It's black-white.
Yeah, I think we are going to start by taking a look at Ikawa's list, which is going to be that Jeskai Energy deck that we saw drafted. And you're right, it is Jeskai Energy. The red is less of a priority. It is closer to a splash, but when you're playing that many 2-drops, it is hard to classify it as a splash. And there's going to be a big, heavy emphasis on those 5 landscapes that Ikawa has. If those landscapes can bring this mana together, this deck can definitely do great things.
And have a look at this masterpiece here. We've got some really, really, really powerful cards in this list, all the way down at the start of the curve in Ocelot Pride, but things like Eerie Auxiliary, a really, really powerful 4-drop. Obstinate Gargoyle can do a huge amount of work, especially when you've got 3 copies of Accursed Marauder in your list. I like this deck, I like this archetype, but historically speaking, what we know about this format, Marnie, is that Orzhov decks, they tend to struggle.
They do tend to struggle. I do like the fact that Kevin's deck has that ability to keep up in card advantage and go late. One of the big pieces that is going to help with that is that Essence Reliquary that he has access to. The ability to use Reliquary, reset a Gargoyle, use Reliquary, pick up a Marauder, play it, sack the Gargoyle. That engine can allow him to really keep the opponent's board in check, and the 3 copies of Accursed Marauder will make sure that he doesn't get run over if Ikawa is able to put together that 2-drop, 3-drop curve that he's looking for.
I highlighted, heading into this, you know, when we were chatting about the format, whatever else, Money, I highlighted Accursed Marauder as actually one of the, like a sort of a low-key, very powerful removal spell. It's just an edict. But in this deck, where you've got fodder to feed to it, when you can play it, bounce it with the Essence Reliquary, with the trigger on the stack, it's sometimes just a straight-up edict that doesn't cost you a card. So there's lots of tricks you can do with it, but we're off to the races here. Kevin Thanakit opening things up with a fetching out a Swamp here, whereas Ikawa has a Plains, and in hand, Mountain Plains, and a bunch of blue cards.
All right, okay, so we are off with Ikawa's deck performing exactly as he hopes it wouldn't.
Exactly as he hopes it wouldn't, yes indeed.
Yeah.
Tempest Harvester, Riddlegate Gargoyle, Dreamtide Whale, all stranded in hand here with another Plains off the top, the Japanese Pro Tour champion, and kicking things off with an Envoy of the Ancestors here for Kevin Thanakit.
Yeah, the big issue here for Ikawa is Kevin's deck is very reactive. So with more time before Ikawa gets on the board, what is going to happen is Kevin is going to rack up those answers in hand while building up his mana, building up his cards. So Kevin can go, I'll put you under pressure. Ikawa can say, I'll play something to try to stabilize. Kevin has an answer, and then another answer, and then another answer. So this is the type of game that Ikawa really does not want to play against this Orzhov deck from Kevin.
We see an Obstinate Gargoyle played after this Envoy here, and it's a great observation you make, Marnie, there about the removal in Kevin's deck. We've got Breathe Your Last, we've got Thraben Charm, there's a Ajani Fells the Godsire. A lot of stuff going on in this list, plus those 3 copies of Accursed Marauder. A lot of ways for Kevin to keep the board clear while also applying pressure.
Yeah, it is definitely the awkward aspect of this matchup here.
All right, we're on. We got the tapped Solar Transformer, which means turn 5, turn 5. We're casting our 2-drops, baby.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect, just like we drew it up. No, this is an unfortunate start for Ikawa here, who really, really did need a blue source. His hand would have been unlocked and opened up had he found an island or a way to fetch one up. But as it is now, Kevin Thanakit firmly in the driver's seat here. Let's see what he does. He's got a Strength of the Harvest.
That's going to get things started very nicely, because once that Gargoyle is modified, it does take to the skies, and this is just a big beating coming across now.
So Strength of the Harvest at this stage, just giving just +1/+1.
5, 8. Yep.
And an attack for 8.
Each creature and enchantment.
Oh, sorry, it's not. Okay.
+3/+3.
It's for each creature and or enchantment you control.
Correct.
Yes. The word creature and enchant in some form appear 10,000 times on that card. So no, it's +3/+3. That's a little better.
Attack for 8, I believe that was from Ikawa.
And so now, back to Ikawa, who has the option of playing 1 blue card. He also has the Static Prison, but doesn't have a huge amount of energy to keep that going. It does generate 2 energy of its own, but that is only a short-term answer.
Yeah, I think you're going to see Whale into Prison here, deal with the Gargoyle, and proliferate onto the Whale. So it is a very powerful stabilizing turn. We know Kevin has the Accursed Marauder for the Whale the next turn, but at least this is going to get through the repass in Kevin's hand. It's going to deal with the Gargoyle. It's going to get the Proliferate. It's going to build up some energy, and that is going to be a great start for Ikawa back into this game.
Much better. Yep.
Assuming he can continue taking this type of turn.
And the difference between this being here an exile effect and a destroy effect is massive. Because
Absolutely.
if that Gargoyle comes back, even just as a 1/1, it's still a 1/1 flyer, it still has lifelink, and it's still going to be able to apply pressure. The Whale, surprisingly, doesn't have flying.
Surprisingly?
Well, it looks like it should, and there's lots of whales in Magic that do have flying, either Tard Whale, whatever else. Traditionally, I would say, you know what, I'm going to make, this is a big call here. I reckon there are more flying whales and non-whales in Magic the Gathering.
I reckon that you are wrong,
All
as
right.
this Whale goes to the graveyard by Curse Marauder.
Okay, well, yeah, and I'm definitely wrong. There are like 3
Yeah.
out of the 12.
Just
but still,
incredibly wrong.
But still, there's Longfin Sky Whale, there's the Star Whale, all right? It's not out of the question.
There was an entire set about Sky Whales, so,
Yeah.
I don't think it was ridiculous to say.
It's a whale made of clouds, dude. Come on, what do you want from me?
manifested Longfin Sky Whale onto the
See,
screen.
I
Well
wasn't,
done,
I wasn't, I
Reggie.
wasn't completely off base. Anyway, we move on now, and here Kevin again truly in the driver's seat. Although now with an island, Ikawa may be able to play to the board a little more effectively. Pays for the Static Prison, of course.
That was a good draw.
5, 2, 4.
Ikawa just drew the Metastatic Evangel, so now you can go Evangel, play creatures like that Railgate Gargoyle or the Tempest Harvester, start proliferating more energy onto yourself. Suddenly that prison is definitely just permanently on the board, and you have a lot to work with now. I think that we have a game on our hands, Mr. Knight.
Yeah, it was a little touch and go there for a while, but it looks like Ikawa has found the tools that he needs. Opens up with the Metastatic Evangel. Follows it up with a Riddlegate Gargoyle. And will we also see
So press 3.
any reason not to play the Tempest Harvester here?
Not really. You sort of
for
need to
1/1,
play it because you have to make sure in this position where you're behind, you're able to start looting through cards. You can't afford the fact that you might draw another land to go with the planes that you have in your hand. Honestly, I would say the Harvester is the most important of the cards that he played this turn.
Just because it's going to be able to bridge him into into the later stages of this game by looting away, for instance, the plane that's in his just sort of rotting away in his
The
hand.
Evangel did a great job of, one, enabling Kawa to have a triple spell turn, which is huge, of course, when you're behind and you play 3 things. That is already helping you. But also, it does make him be at a very high energy count. 10 energy now means that he has the ability to pay for prison. He has the ability to pay for the looter. So he is very much in a position where he can try to keep up and pull ahead.
He can buffer his life total a little bit with the Gargoyle as well. He can, if he finds something like the, if he finds a way to draw extra cards, for instance, with the Royal Cartographer, right? He's got a lot of mana to dump into doing that. A lot of energy, I should say.
Yes.
A lot of energy that is ready to be spent. So he's in an okay position here. But still,
How about
Thanakit, after tanking for a little bit, he's going to get in.
First strike goes to the Slith.
So pays the 2 energy to give the Hex Gold Slith first strike.
okay, so you take
Yeah, that's
5.
24.
Looks like no blocks here. So Thanakit will gain even more life. And the Slith will pick up a counter.
Ikawa has no idea how close he came to dying there, because Kevin's hand has a revitalizing repass for +1/+1 and a Winged for +2/+2. So Ikawa is at 4. So he lived by one life there by not blocking.
All right, and we've got the counter now on the Slith. So, yeah, Ikawa sailing very close to the wind there, Marnie.
Yeah.
But back over to
Pays energy.
Ikawa now. Did you see how he kept his
Oh, yeah.
finger on it the entire time?
turn.
The entire
Honestly, I
time.
thought we were at a point of the game where Ikawa had forgotten to pay for the prison and they were trying to figure that out or something by how intently he was focused on it. But no, it was just,
He's just absolutely
remember
not-
to
he's
pay,
not
remember to
forgetting it.
pay,
Yeah.
remember to pay.
Many, many years ago, I studied sound production, you know,
Yep.
like live venues and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And one of the things you're told is to keep your finger on the master volume at all times, right? So if anything happens, you can just turn it right down. And that's what he was doing. He was not forgetting about that card. And now Ikawa, what's he found here?
He drew a
Solstice
Solstice
Zealot
Zealot,
and
then he looted, and he found a Johnny Fells the Godsire.
Godsire. All of a sudden, this hand is looking a lot better than it was before.
Yeah, because now Ikawa can go a Johnny Fells the Godsire, get rid of the Envoy of the Ancestors. That leaves Kevin on just one creature. Then you can attack with the Evangel and give it lifelink by paying some energy if you want. That pads your life total back up a bit. And because Kevin doesn't have a blocker, because Kevin doesn't have any energy now, that means that even if the 3/2 Slith attacks in, Ikawa can offer a trade for it.
So you go to 7, I go to 31.
So Ikawa here, wisely, buffering his life total a little bit, sending in the Evangel and giving it lifelink with the Gargoyle. And now down comes Ajani Fells the Godsire, or in this case, Ajani Fells the Envoy. Thanakit's going to have a quick read of this card. It's a lot like the old Elspeth Conquers Death in the way that it does tend to go after larger creatures.
Thanakit making sure that it says exile so he can't save it with that revitalizing repass. This is the second exile effect that Ikawa has played in the face of that repass that has been in Kevin's hand since basically the start of the game. Finger goes back on the static prison.
back on the master volume.
And we gotta say, again, Ikawa is potentially 1 point short of death. There is 3 power in Kevin's hand, 3 power on the board, and Ikawa is at 7.
Yep.
So even if he doesn't block, he won't die, but he's right there.
Because he found, Thanakit found just a swamp off the top here, so Ikawa on a Virtual 1. I don't think he blocks here, does he? He didn't block last time, so do things change now?
I think he blocks
He
because
does
there's
block.
no first strike this turn.
Okay.
And he forces one of those 2 tricks from Kevin's hand. I would guess that it's going to be the repassed, just because the Wingit giving a flying counter is going to be able to potentially catch Ikawa by surprise and allow Kevin to close out the game, especially considering the only flying blocker that Ikawa has is the one that is about to die.
Thanakit hemorrhaging information here as well, tapping and then
Got 'em both.
untapping his lands. Yeah, like this is it's a small thing, but good players will pick up on the fact that you tapped one swamp and then untapped it, and then tapped white black and then untapped it, and instead it's going to be wing it. But now I think Ikawa will have Thanakit on the repast.
I think so.
I'm going to scry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a direct.
All right. A scry now for Thanakit. Maybe that's the reason to cast that. He wants to make sure that the next card he draws is as good as possible.
Yeah, and that is a flying counter. It's not flying until end of turn, so the Slith will still have flying. It's just not a surprise anymore. So Ikawa can play the rest of the game with that information in mind, and whether or not it changes anything, that it's not a surprise, that's to be seen. But of course, there is that inherent value in the scry, as you said, when Kevin is in a position where he's so close, but just a little bit away.
All right, passes the turn after this. We know, of course, he's got nothing else going on in hand apart from that revitalizing repast. Pays for the enchantment. Don't you worry about that. He's not forgetting about that. Our good friend Yoshihiko Ikawa. That static prison is here.
And I think he's just going to
stay.
push a Johnny Fells the Godsire right to Chapter 3 as well here, because he's going to get the token from the Evangel. Does Evangel trigger non-token? Okay, so you don't get a trigger from...
No, but he's got the Solstice Zealot in hand.
Yes, but he doesn't get it immediately off of the cat token coming in from a Johnny Fells the Godsires. What I was trying to decipher here. Kevin did scry to the bottom, by the way, so Ikawa does at least have the information that there isn't a guaranteed good card coming off the top.
So Ikawa here can, as you say, cast the Zealot and...
Yeah, we're waiting for this. Yeah. No problem. Take your time.
he can cast the Zealot and proliferate.
Yep.
And also, let's not forget, double vigilance.
Yep.
Huge. No, it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter at all. Most keywords, there are exceptions, obviously, things like Exalted, but most keywords, multiple instances of them are largely redundant. If you've got Death Touch twice, you know,
where
it doesn't
is
happen.
the Vigilance counter? I think that is what they're currently
That's what they're waiting
for.
on. Yeah, they're waiting on the Vigilance counter.
So they're just waiting to get that, but so he can give Double Strike to the Evangel. That would be a burst of damage, not a big burst of damage, but a burst of damage, right? And can keep upping that energy. The question for me is, will Ikawa loot?
Well, this is what I was going to say. You put the Vigilance counter on the Harvester, right? And then it will, you can attack with it and then loot afterwards.
You could.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is, how much is Ikawa attacking with here?
Okay. So it doesn't give anything Double Strike until end of turn. So that's the answer to that. And now we're going to see the loot.
All right.
Okay. And discarding, I would imagine that land that's in hand, a Conduit Goblin.
All right. Haste on the table.
Okay. This one's a lot closer than we'd think here. Things finally coming together for Ikawa. Really clever move putting the Vigilance counter on the Harvester there, enabling it to do damage as well as provide ongoing utility.
Yeah, start maximizing your damage where you can.
Now, with Proliferate, you are able to proliferate certain things. You can choose any number. If you want, you could proliferate your opponent's counters. Not something you always want to do unless they've got something like a poison counter. But here, my point is that Ikawa doesn't have to get to the third chapter of the saga. He can choose not to proliferate them.
Absolutely. And that is what he's doing, is he's saying that I don't need the Double Strike this turn. You're at 26. It's not making a big difference, but it could be the difference between me pushing damage through a blocker and not next turn, so I'm going to play it as such.
Especially if there's something off the top that is really powerful. You know, even a Riddlegate Gargoyle off the top would be great. A flyer that is able to push through a bunch of lifelink double striking damage.
Yep.
Here.
Yeah, if he is able to find a second copy of the Gargoyle, one, of course, already in the graveyard, but the second one off the top would be pretty big here because, as we've mentioned, Ikawa is unknowingly, or maybe knowingly because Kevin did give away some information, is playing this by the edge of his seat. He knows that he can put Kevin on at least that repass in the hand. So he is in a position where he could get bursted down, but now that he's getting to untap with the Zealot, he's going to be in a much better position, I think.
You got a feel for Kevin as well. He's just drawn 2 lands off the top. Yoshihiko, with the aid of the Tempest Harvester, is drawing a lot better. Now, the Double Strike, where is it going? Now, this Double Strike is not a counter, unusually. We're not seeing it give... it's unusual that it gives a Vigilance counter, but not a Double Strike counter. It's just Double Strike till end of turn.
The Double Strike counter would be a little too powerful.
Do you think so?
I think so.
On a 5-drop?
It's just a really strong keyword.
Yeah.
I think they have been very careful to put that keyword on cards more sparingly these days. It's just very strong. And you don't want to cause a situation where Double Strike is dominating the format.
Well, we're going to see here the Conduit Goblin, I think, was paid to beef up the Evangel?
That was the one that was given Double Strike, so now you give it an extra 2 points of power, essentially, using the Goblin.
All right. So that's a big hit here. 14 damage coming across just like that, more than halving Kevin's life total. And now it's a...
flyer as well.
That's a kite. Now, does this trigger the...
It does not.
The metastatic Evangel? It doesn't, because it's not a creature coming into play. It is a creature coming into play, but it's the creature's token. It's a little confusing.
Right, exactly.
But the Phyrexian Germ is generated. It's not. It doesn't enter the battlefield.
I have nothing. Your move. Kevin has 1 draw, and it's another land.
And it's bad news here for Kevin, who was unable to find the last couple of points of damage. He had Ikawa on a virtual 1 life.
Right.
On multiple turns there, Marnie.
Did something just walk over and blow Ikawa's graveyard onto his deck?
How did that happen?
What just happened?
We need the live action replay. What was that? Was that a seagull or something? The judge comes in here. Okay, this looks like...
That is the last card that went there. And
all right.
That whale was in the graveyard.
That was very confusing. I did not see that, man. We got to pay closer attention to these things, Marty. Oh my goodness.
And I think it's just game.
Yeah, the Salsa Zealot tapping down the Slith here. No blockers, but we are seeing Ikawa be as surgical as ever, making sure he pays for the prison. That gargoyle has been
3,
put
4,
away
5,
for a long time.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 just on the board, even without the goblin buff. So I think Ikawa is... I think Ikawa is going to play the cartographer here and give it haste and just go for
draw
everything.
3 cards and then... Oh, sorry, yeah, no, attack for lethal.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
probably better.
That's probably the
a better line.
Yeah. It's really close, though. Could go with either option.
He has to think about what he needs to play around, right? Now, this is something that you'll see players when they are close to victory, is they will think about, right, what card can I lose to at this point, right? You take fewer risks, you play slow, you play more conservatively, because at this point you've got a lot more to lose. When you're further behind, you need to take risks. You need to try to get back into the game. You shoot for outcomes that are perhaps a little less likely. But here, Yoshihiko has the space here to take his time and think, well, if I don't win this turn, maybe I can win next turn instead. Maybe that's the safer bet. So let's see what his attacks look like here, Marty.
So I count 12 on the board, 14 with the Royal Cartographer. Looking at Kevin's life, he's a 12. And I believe the only out that Kevin would have is Breathe Your Last on the Goblin to gain 2. And that would still be 14. That would still be 12 damage, which is lethal. No, sorry. It's taking 2 off and gaining 2. So he would live through that. And I think if Ikawa plays around exactly that, he can still attack with everything and then post-combat move the kite onto the Vigilance creature. And then have a flying blocker.
Sure, yeah. The other option is you leave, which I think is what we're going to see here, you leave the Zealot back, which is the best way to ensure that there's no huge creature that comes across next turn.
Yeah, this doesn't play around Thraben Charm to live, but it does also mean that you probably do live through the turn from Kevin coming back. It's very unlikely in this spot, given how Kevin has played the game, that he's going to have Thraben Charm plus something.
Yes.
All right, so there's the attack. Yoshihiko says, what do you got, my friend?
Do the math.
Counting it up.
12 is 12.
Yeah, yeah. 2,
And still with multiple options.
5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, yeah.
Because you pumped it.
Two lands and a revitalizing repast in hand, says Kevin Thanakit. And he goes down. Unfortunate result for him in game number 1, particularly considering how it started. We did highlight the fact that Yoshihiko Ikawa may have mana issues. He did indeed. Took a long time for him to find that blue source. But once he did money, his entire hand was unlocked. And he was able to leverage a pretty convincing victory by the end of things.
I think that is part of the strength of Ikawa's deck having really high card quality across the board. Is even if you stumble a little bit, as we see Island Mountain plays the first 3 cards that join Ikawa's hand.
Yeah, and also it looks like a fetch land there as well.
Yeah.
So no mana issues for Yoshihiko this time, which is good news for fans of the reigning Pro Tour champion. Kevin Thanakit also a little bit of a slower start for him, but he does have the Envoy. He's got some good removal in hand as well, and that Fetid Gargantua at the top of the curve to refill. Yeah,
so he does have the higher end that he was missing the previous game when he started stalling out a bit and just drawing a lot of lands. Having something like the Fetid Gargantua, that would have been huge in that game. Not so much now.
Emrakul's Messenger, the opening play here for Yoshihiko, and it's met with an Envoy on the other side, Envoy of the Ancestors. Throwback to the old Cans of Tarkia block with Outlast, a slow but very dependable mechanic. Although all we cared about back then was just not losing to Citadel Siege. Anyone remembers that? One of the bombiest rares in Magic's existence. And now a Zealot here, once again, coming down. And did some work last game.
Yep.
And may do some work this game as well.
Yeah, and Ikawa's hand this time is fantastic. He has access to that prison again. He has the Zealot to start tapping things. And I believe he does have that copy of Ajani Fells the Godsire again in hand. So now that Kevin has gone with that counter on the Envoy, Ajani Fells the Godsire is online, quote unquote.
See what Kevin wants to do with the rest of his turn. Not a lot of options. Can't cast the Breathe Your Last. Thraben Charm can kill the Messenger, I guess.
Yeah, I think now that Ikawa drew the Whale, the temptation to just go Dreamtide Whale land Dreamtide Whale, Static Prison, get rid of your creature, proliferate is too strong, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. Yep. And we're seeing here Yoshihiko, excuse me, things really coming together for him in game number 2.
Yeah, the power of his deck when he's able to have these sorts of curves is incredibly nice. And I do like if he's going for the whale play, doing it post-combat, as if Kevin does have access to that Thraben Charm to destroy the Static Prison, then he wouldn't be able to bring back the Envoy as a blocker. So Ikawa does go for this line just post-combat to make sure, all right, cool, what are you going to do about this?
Trigger's fine. I'm thinking about...
All right, so the proliferate trigger resolves, says Kevin, but I'm going to think about how to deal with this. And it's going to be Thraben Charm on the prison.
And destroy, and I can get energy, okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ikawa still gets his 2 energy.
Yes. My understanding of the way that this card is formatted is you will still get the energy, but at no point does the Envoy become exiled.
Correct.
In the olden days, when it was formatted like an Oblivion Ring, for instance, there would be a brief period where it would leave.
Oh, it would just be gone permanently.
Oh, that's right. If you didn't, yes, you'd have to be very judicious when you target the Oblivion Ring. But here, no, the counter sticks around.
Yes.
On the Envoy here, and it's an Ajani Fells the Godsire on the other side of things now for Kevin, which is going to take the whale out. All that work that Yoshihiko Ikawa has done to have whales on the battlefield, but he's not going to let it happen this time. And now the Ajani Fells the Godsire coming down on the other side of things and removing that Envoy. So Yoshihiko Ikawa in the driver's seat, and it's up now to Kevin to use these black cards that he's got in his hand to try to stem the bleeding a little bit, Marty.
Yeah, the Gargantua is going to be nice here, but I think one issue that Kevin is going to have is that copy of Unstable Amulet that Ikawa drew, because Ikawa already has 5 energy built up, another 5 essentially in hand between the Amulet and the Gargoyle, and once he starts activating this Amulet for an extra card a turn, this sort of grindy matchup that we saw play out in game 1 and is going to play out here because we've passed the early turns of the game where Kevin could burst down Ikawa, is just going to go further and further in his favor because of that Amulet.
Do we see the Vigilance kind of get put on the Solstice Zealot here, given that it has a tap ability? You can attack with it and then tap things down. We may see that, or it could be perhaps
just the Messenger.
Flyer. Yeah, okay.
It's hard because with the amount of creatures on Kevin's board, you're not going to find yourself attacking with the Zealot too often. So more often than not, it is just going to be a wasted counter. It does eventually give you the best utility, and maybe that's what Ikawa is playing to, is eventually I can go, on your turn, tap your creature, untap, attack with my Zealot, tap another creature, and that's going to be worth it more than having an extra potential blocker back, break glass in time of emergency sort of situation.
I want to talk to you about something a little more higher level here, Marnie,
okay,
as these players get continue these turns, as we see an Unstable Amulet here. I want to talk about the characterization of Ikawa's deck.
Yeah.
It's a low curve deck. It is able to generate quite aggressive draws. But we are seeing in this game with the Unstable Amulet, last game with the Tempest Harvester, what decks like this are able to do, cheap, efficient, low-to-the-ground decks, what they're able to do when they can access multiple cards per turn.
Yes.
It really changes the way these decks play out when they've got access to reliable, steady card draw, because it means that they're double spelling way more regularly than usual. If you're just putting out a 2-drop every turn, it's not that impressive. If you're putting out 2 2-drops every turn, it makes a big difference.
Especially when those 2-drops aren't just, goblin pikers. They are 2-drops that have flying, that give lifelink, that give haste, that have utility. It all makes it so your game plan is a lot more dynamic than we would see in maybe other limited formats. And I think that is part of the reason that Ikawa was so excited about those 2 copies of Dreamtide Whale that he picked up, because his deck is able to double spell very consistently. It's entirely designed to keep double spelling.
It's just something that you look at, right? In the abstract, we threw up the graphics for both of these lists. You think, right, okay, Kevin is wanting to play the late game. His deck has bigger threats. It's got more expensive cards. It's just better positioned to play a longer game. But what we're sort of seeing here is Yoshihiko is demonstrating to us that, no, his low-to-the-ground aggro deck actually has a lot more staying power, a lot more legs than we would have imagined with the first blush look at the lists themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is part of the reason that I was really excited about Ikawa's deck, is if he can get over the very minor hurdle that is mana problems.
So far, yes, all right.
his deck is really exciting because the card quality is just so high. You're playing a bunch of 2-drops, but all of your 2-drops are great in different situations, and they don't fall off as you normally expect 2-drops to do. They continue being relevant. They are looters, they are flyers, they give lifelink, they give haste, and that makes your top decks better. So it really just is a situation where you're just outlasting your opponent so often if you can make the mana work.
We'll move back into talking about what's going on in this game here, but I just think it's important to note that for players maybe getting into a draft format like this and realizing that there are dimensions available to a deck that you would think, oh, this is just a low to the ground aggro deck. There are other ways that you can leverage late game advantage through the use of cards like Royal Cartographer, through the use of this amulet, through the harvester, whatever else. It's just something to keep in mind, and we're seeing Yoshihiko put together a deck that I think is better than a lot of people would have imagined at first blush. Anyway, we can zoom back in on what's going on here as Kevin Thanakit is holding on to, again, still an uncastable Breathe Your Last. Hasn't found that second Black Source. And a Cursed Marauder as an edict effect. That's what we call it when you force your opponent to sacrifice a creature. It's going to be Emrakul's Messenger along with the Marauder itself.
Yeah, I think we may see Kevin feel forced to play this repass as land. He really doesn't want to. It's pretty excellent with the Gargantua, though with his life total dwindling and the board situation as it is, he may not really have a choice because this game's not going to last much longer, Riley. Ikawa has the ability to give double strike next turn, attack with his Vigilance creatures, tap something, an extra damage from the amulet if it doesn't hit a land. This game is very close to over with Kevin at 11.
I think that was the Royal Cartographer off the top as well.
Is that card good?
No relation to Royal Assassin.
Oh, of course not.
A different type of Royal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A different Royal altogether.
A different Royal altogether, man.
Yeah. Ikawa is just.
But sorry, to answer your question, yes.
Oh, okay.
You asked me if it's a good card. Yes, it is.
Okay,
yes,
great.
Yes, it has the text draw. It has the text draw 3 cards on it.
I appreciate your expertise.
That's what I'm here for, mate. I don't want to brag to you, money.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to bring this up. Wasn't going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But while preparing for this event, obviously, hit the drafts on Arena. I did get to Platinum 3.
Plat 3.
Platinum 3.
Can we get a round of applause for Riley Knight?
So technically, when we organise these events, there tend to be roles assigned to the people in the booth. I'm the play-by-play. Marnie is the expert.
You want to swap seats?
I'm thinking maybe we may need to rejuggle things a little bit. Because Riley Big Plat's Knight has really
Big Plat's 3.
Big Plat. Well, no, look, it's platinum. Doesn't matter where.
Plat 3. No. Let's
we don't need the specificity. All right, we don't have time, money. Let's focus back on this game. We don't need to be, who got to what rank. Doesn't matter.
All right.
It's Big Plats. That's what it is. All right, we've got the Solstice Zealot tapping down the Gargantua here as Yoshihiko, as you say, looking to just put himself in what is a literal winning position here.
Yeah, and I think just the 8 here with the tap, part of the reason is Ikawa is making sure Thanakit cannot activate that Gargantua for potential cards.
Yeah.
He's saying, I'm putting you to 2, deal with it.
Extra damage done by the Harvester cast off of the amulet. There's the Royal Cartographer.
And landfall.
And another energy counter here. So Kevin, do or die moment for him. And I suspect it's going to be the latter because that Breathe Your Last is not going to keep him in this game. It can gain a total of 2 life for him.
Remove a flyer off the board. But there's a lot of issues still. Now, the Inspired Inventor is a decent draw. It's 2 blockers.
It is.
I don't think Kevin is straight up dead. If he goes Inventor Pass, has 4 blockers, a removal spell for the flyer, and 2 life to be gained. So even if Ikawa was to attack with everything and tap a blocker, then he would still not be getting in for lethal.
And, all Ikawa's going to be able to do is
draw
3 cards. Oh, man. So really rough spot.
Really disappointing.
Yeah. Tough spot for the reigning Pro Tour champion here. But Kevin, he's going to take his time in considering this because this may be the moment that the game and indeed the match, therefore, slips out of his hands. So he has to make these decisions very carefully.
Timely, but carefully. The worst feeling in a Pro Tour is you walk away feeling like you let the game get away from you because of your opponent's pace of play or the lights or whatever it may be. You want to feel like you played Magic in your normal state, in the normal environment.
Yeah, but it does add extra pressure. And, we see players who are very familiar with the bright lights of the feature match area. Just another game. I've talked to people, do you get nervous? Not anymore. No, that was years ago. But now, newer players coming into the feature match area for the first, second, third time even, it's an adjustment. It's certainly an adjustment, pushes you out of your comfort zone. But Yoshihiko Ikawa's comfort zone is winning games of Magic in the Pro Tour feature match area, and he is poised to do just that. Oh, look at this. He's activating the brain zone.
Was that? I couldn't see what he drew. No. I think it might have been Party Thrasher, but I'm not actually sure.
It's a 3-drop, so
it's Glimpse. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
All right. 3 more cards.
Yeah. Well, we said he was going to draw 3, and this is coming close to it.
This is 3 cards in exile, so the combo of Glimpse plus Amulet has now come into play, and so I think that may do it.
Kevin on 4 life. Yeah. Now, the land being played from exile won't trigger the Amulet. Correct. It says whenever you cast a spell.
Yep.
But
I think that's lethal if I've done my mathematics correctly, which is never a given. I am from North America, after all.
Yes, very. Look, I'm not going to say anything on that. I don't think people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, so I'm not going to weigh in on that one. But no. Here, look, we've got 2 cards coming in from exile. That's 2 damage upstairs to Kevin Thanakit, and now Yoshihiko Ikawa with a bunch of extra energy.
This is the pace of play of a man who thinks he has it.
Yep. Yes, indeed, and it looks like he does. He can tap down a blocker and still attack with the Zealot. That vigilance counter coming in enormously handy there.
I guess it's 1 short of lethal because the Cartographer only has 1 power. So maybe
terrible card. Put in the bin.
Maybe you just draw 3 cards with it. Instead, just settle for drawing 3 cards.
I'll pass.
Yep. I like it.
All right. Well, and the upside for Yoshihiko here is he gets to continue winning for longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, if we think about it, Ikawa has been basically living in this feature match area for a solid 3 months or so, between Seattle, where he was our day 1 undefeated player at 8-0.
True.
And then our first player into the top 8, and then our eventual champion. And now he's just been here since, end of April.
It's now it's what he's putting down as his residential address on government forms.
Yeah, the Pro Tour feature match area.
Pro Tour feature match area.
Feature match A. Thank you very much.
Where you'll find me, yes.
Yeah, apartment number, feature match A. Thank you.
Wherever the Pro Tour is being played.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. A gentleman of no fixed abode.
There it is.
And the Party Thrasher as well. This should be enough here. This Amulet has done so much work here.
You can see why he first picked this card.
Yeah.
In the energy deck, when you have the ability to go pay 6 energy, draw 3 cards, and still exile 2 more cards to the Amulet. It is just absolutely gross what this card can do.
And it comes back to what we were saying about the way that he's built his deck. He's not drawing 5 drops, right? He's not like, oh, great, I've drawn 3 cards. I can cast 1 of them. He draws 3 cards. He casts 3 cards. Right. Kevin, down to 1. Party Thrasher online. 10 billion cards in hand here for Yoshihiko Ikawa. Find something off the top, and that is going to be enough for game number 2 and the entire match to go the way of Yoshihiko Ikawa, our Pro Tour champion from last time around, wins in very convincing fashion in game and match number 1.
Doesn't have to move quite yet. Can continue residing in feature match A.
Yeah, exactly right.
Keeps it going.
Keep the moving vans away. We don't need them just yet.
I do love to see Ikawa just continue crushing. He is one of my favorite pro players over the past few years to watch, and you can definitely see why the way he navigated that draft into that match, into tough positions, mana screw earlier on in game 1, and through it all, it was, this is my game plan. This is how I'm going to navigate it. This is the resources that I use, with its life total being very, very precarious, but still managing it and ultimately getting a win. And his deck looked pretty good doing it.
Yep. We're going to hopefully be able to see more of Yoshihiko Ikawa in the feature match area. We'll see how we go as more of these matches unfold. Thanks for your company so far. Plenty more Magic to play across the rest of the weekend. We'll be back after a short break at the news desk with Maria and the team. We're looking forward to your company there as we continue our coverage of Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3.